What's going on, everybody out there in YouTube land? It's your boy Moodz to the 616 back in the house, and of course I've got my co-host with the most, the Mexicant, Double Shot J, also known as JP. What's going on, brother?
Yo, back for episode number 2 here.
Deuce. And actually, appropriate that we would have a sequel for episode 2.
That makes sense, yeah.
Psycho 2. Why not do it for episode 2? And that's purely random. But yeah, so if you guys didn't watch the first episode, this is Rue Morgue's 200 challenge, basically, where Rue Morgue put out this magazine about 10 years ago, and it was 200, like calling it kind of like alternative horror films, 200 list. And so we put all these into a randomizer. Whatever comes up, we review that week. So for week 2, Psycho 2 came up, and I was so much happy because I'm a really, really big fan of the Psycho franchise in general, you know, and I've always stated that, you know, Psycho 2 is actually one of my all-time favorite direct sequels, you know, out of any. Like, there's some really good part 2s out there. Like, when you think of like really damn good sequels, some that even surpass the original films, like, I immediately think of Psycho 2. I know a lot of people, and actually Quentin Tarantino is one of them, I believe, that actually like Psycho 2 more than the original. But I have heard many people say that they prefer Psycho 2, and I get it. But when I think of like really good sequels, I think of The Stepfather Part 2. You know, that's a really good sequel.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But yes.
When it comes to sequels, like, you really have a couple different types of sequels you could do, right? You could do one that's just like its own thing, and then you could do one that's like has nothing to do with the original film, and then you could do one that it's like a direct continuation. And when you look at Psycho 2, and we mentioned it at the end of the episode last week, the fact that it's a direct continuation in real time, right, like 20 years later, yeah, and has so much stuff from the first film,
22 years, like
22 years,
22 shots of Moodz in horror.
Yeah, it's actually quite incredible, like, to even tackle that and to then do it well is.
Yeah, you know, I don't think that they really had high hopes for this because, I mean, let's face it, when you make a sequel, like a direct sequel to a film, and so many years have gone past, it generally doesn't work. So I know in developing this movie, I don't think that they really had a lot of high hopes for the project, because this movie, Psycho 2, was originally conceived to be a TV film, and it was not going to be starring Anthony Perkins because he didn't want to reprise the role. And I respect that because, you know, Psycho, 22 years later, it has a legacy. It was classic by this time. You don't really sometimes want to, try and fix something that's not really broken, kind of thing.
You don't want to taint it. Like, you're worried that if you approach that material again, it's somehow going to damage the reputation of that performance. You know, I could totally get that from Anthony Perkins. Like, that's one of those cases where, like, the only way I would want to do that is if I read the script and I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good.
Okay, so that's interesting you bring up the script because, he wasn't interested in it. And they were actually developing, like I said, as a TV film, and they were originally going to star or try and cast Christopher Walken, I believe, actually, as Norman Bates for the TV film.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, so anyways, the script ended up kind of surfacing and stuff, and Perkins obviously signed on to it. And then, so they changed it from making a TV film, and then that's how it got to be theatrical. Was when Perkins signed on, they're like, okay, now we're gonna do this thing right. We're gonna go theatrical with this, and because Perkins really liked the script and stuff, so which is pretty interesting. And oddly enough, you know who the script was wrote by?
Was
Tom Holland?
Tom Holland, yeah.
And we all know Tom Holland from Fright Night. This is before Fright Night, so he was a writer, and he actually wrote the script for Psycho 2, which Anthony Perkins really liked, and so then we get Psycho 2.
Also, you have, great cinematography there by Dean Cundy.
Yeah, I know.
The legend.
And I've always stated, too, like, Psycho 2 has some amazing shots in it, man. Like, there is some incredible sequences and just, oh, man. And this movie's lit so well. Like the lighting and the cinematography is so good in this film, but it's just so Dean Cundey, right? I mean, the reason why Halloween 3 is the best Halloween movie is because Cundey he was the DP on that too. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he was the DP on the first one as well.
First 3. He was the first 3.
Yeah, which the first one, I mean, cinematography is outstanding in the first film too.
Yeah.
But also, you have a musical score by Jerry Goldsmith, of course.
Yeah.
So, I mean, classic.
I know. Like, I mean, what movies didn't he work on? So like, I mean, between, you know, the music and the cinematography and the writing, and then it leads us into who directed it, which was Richard Franklin, who I thought was kind of an interesting choice, but I don't believe he also was the original choice for this, because from what I know, and what I've read, I think, who actually turned down this movie? Somebody turned down this, and he ended up getting the role because someone turned it down. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now. But if you're not familiar with Richard Franklin, he's an Aussie director, and he did like he did Patrick and Road Games.
And Road Games.
Yeah, and then he went on, actually, speaking of Vinegar Syndrome, we were just kind of talking about before the show, he actually directed Cloak and Dagger, which is getting a 4K release from Vinegar Syndrome. So that's kind of a weird kind of link in there. And then he also directed Link.
Link, 1986.
Yeah, so
killer monkey movie.
right. It's kind of interesting that he did Road Games, because I know originally Meg Tilly wasn't the first choice to star as, you know, or star in the film. It was actually, they kind of wanted Jamie Lee Curtis
in Psycho 2.
Yeah, because it kind of made sense, because her mom
that would have been actually, like, really
well, it made sense because her mom, of course, starred in the first one, and it would have made sense for her to be in the second one, kind of thing. But at this point, she had wanted out of the horror genre. So, and then she had just got a role in Trading Places, right? That famous movie with, you know, Dan Aykroyd and stuff, and, you know, with her famous booby scene. But yeah, so she didn't want to return to horror, so that's why and then Meg Tilly was cast in film. And what I've read about Meg Tilly is that her and Anthony Perkins on the set of this film hated each other. Like they did not get along.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely did not, because I guess her ignorance kind of played into it. She'd never seen the original Psycho movie before, so she didn't really know the legacy of like Anthony Perkins and the character and stuff like that. And she was on set one day and she said something on the lines of, I was reading actually in the factoid things, and she said something about on the lines of like, why is Anthony Perkins getting all the shine here? And he got pissed off, right? Because she just didn't know who the fuck he was, and kind of thing. So I guess like their working experience was just hell, and she never even went to the premiere of the movie. Like she just kind of wrote this movie off because she just didn't have fun doing the movie and stuff. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it would have been pretty interesting to have Jamie Lee Curtis star in the sequel. It would have made complete sense, considering, you know, Richard Franklin actually worked with her before, you know?
Yeah.
Right? On Road Games.
That would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Maybe it's in the trivia here. Somebody famous turned down this. Which
I was trying to look for it, but I couldn't find it.
Oh man, it's gonna hit me. Oh, Brian De Palma.
Ooh, De Palma. That would have been a good choice, considering, you know, he has that sort of Hitchcockian style. Right.
And that's what I was thinking too, and I was like, De Palma. Like, that's what he did. He did Hitchcockian type movies. This would have been perfect for him. And it makes sense that, you know, that he was asked to direct this movie, and then of course he obviously turned it down. So which leads us into,
some people just aren't fans of sequels too. You know what I mean? Some people just don't want to touch sequels.
But, you know, smart directors are smart for a reason, because doing a sequel to a bona fide classic movie can be very risky, because your name's attached to the shit, right? Like, you know, I mean, like I always say, like, sequels don't taint the original movies, just like remakes don't taint the original. Like, you know, some people are like, well, they remade this movie, and now I can't stand the original one. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it really changed how the original movie is. But I get it, though, like, from a director's standpoint, why you wouldn't want to touch something that's classic. I mean, it would be different if it was just a sequel to a whatever movie, but we're talking fucking Psycho here, man.
Yeah, well, if Gus Van Sant can continue his career after doing the Psycho remake, I think everybody's safe from taking your career.
That's a very, very fair point. All right, so Anyways, let's talk about Psycho 2. So, quick little synopsis on the movie. Like we said, it came out in 1983. Is technically 23 years after Psycho. It's set in real time, 22 years later. The production probably went into it. Probably started in 1982.
Yes.
Released in 1983. So, anyways, in reality, it's set in real time. So, 22 years later. So, after 22 years later, psychiatric care, Norman Bates attempts to return to a life of solitude, but the specters of his crimes and his mother continue to haunt him. So off the beginning of the movie, we basically we see Norman Bates just getting let out of the psychiatric care after 22 years because he's been deemed, I guess, kind of legally sane now. I think that's how they even put it. They deem him legally sane. He's been rehabilitated. He's been legally sane and stuff. And of course, Marion Crane, the famous victim from the first film, her sister shows up, and of course she's voicing her displeasure for his release and stuff like that, and yeah, she's not very fucking happy about that shit. But anyways, he ends up going back to his hotel. It's kind of interesting too how they set it up, because like Dennis Franz actually is the dude working in the hotel or in the motel. If you know Dennis, he's such a piece of shit in this movie too. But I guess
he is.
And I like how they explain it away too, because I'm thinking to myself going, okay, so this guy goes to basically jail or psychiatric. He goes away for 22 years, but his motel is still up and running. But I guess they actually explained it in the film too. Dennis Franz was sent by the state to actually run this joint. I don't know why they would even try to keep it open. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you would think it would be a public nuisance at that point.
Right.
They would be like, yeah.
Right.
But I remember, like, when I was younger, I kind of had a minor issue with the fact that they even released Norman, but I just chalked it up to like, okay, well, it's a sequel, you got to have something. But as time has gone on and I've looked into so many cases and true crime and stuff, there's dozens and hundreds of examples of people only spending like 20 years or even 10 years for murders and stuff like that. Like the famous case that the Girl Next Door was based on,
right?
Like most of those people, like the family members, got out of prison, including the aunt who, or not, she wasn't in the movie, she's the aunt, but in real life she was just like a friend of the family, but she got out of prison. Like, and that was a heinous act.
I think your best option if you're gonna kill somebody and get out of jail or wherever after so much time is to probably have some type of insanity claim to start with, and then you go through rehabilitation. Because if you're like a sane person like us, which is, modestly speaking, I guess, I don't know if we're totally sane, but if me or you killed somebody, we're most likely not going to be able to attempt that defense. We're going to go to jail and be probably locked away, and the keys can be thrown away, kind of thing. So if you claim this, go to rehabilitation, and I think it happens more often than you think. But I know that using those defenses nowadays is not an easy thing, and sometimes it's not even an option.
Hard.
It's not even really an option anymore. Not like back in the 70s and 80s where everybody used to claim. Remember back in the day when you were like, "Well, I was drinking." So I wasn't legally responsible. It wasn't me. It was the goddamn beer. It's like,
exactly.
Like you can't do that shit anymore, right? So, and I know with the insanity claims and shit, it's a lot harder. But you got to remember, this is 1983. This is kind of right in the realm of when you could still get released and be rehabilitated. Which let's face it, you can maybe. I don't know.
Well, in the case of this film, it's interesting because the way that it plays out, you're led to believe that he was rehabilitated. Like, he's actually the sympathetic character here.
Oh, big time. Yeah. And
it's people fucking with him and messing with his mind that causes him to sort of snap. And he only, we spoil, right? Correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. He only kills one person in this film,
right,
who was also a killer. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I guess he probably was rehabilitated. Yeah, sure, he still had issues, but he definitely seemed like he was fighting to be a good person throughout the film. So you do feel bad for him.
Yeah, it's a mean-spirited narrative, for somebody that gets let out of the psychiatric ward after 22 years as being deemed, rehabilitated to go and fuck with his head and kind of conjure up those devils again and, make him go fucking crazy and stuff. It's like... but I really do like the narrative of this movie, though, because it does make a lot of sense on who's doing it. She's a family member, and then we get that reveal in the film that, Mary is actually her daughter, you know, like, and they were working as a team fucking with him. So yeah, I mean, you know, Norman Bates.
And it makes sense from her perspective too, because like even she says like, you know, he killed your aunt. Like your aunt is dead because of him. You know what I mean? And like obviously she's pretty pissed off. Like if one of your loved ones was taken away and then the person who did it is let out of prison or a psychiatric ward, you'd probably be pretty upset too. And it makes sense why she would want to get him sent back as fast as possible. But it's pretty devious on how she goes about doing it.
It's pretty natural for a human to be pissed off at somebody that wronged you as much as he did to the family and stuff like that. But it's interesting with Mary's character, played by Meg Tilly, which we should mention is actually the younger sister of Jennifer Tilly. I always used to think that she was the older sister, but she's actually 2 years younger than Jennifer Tilly.
And that's because Jennifer Tilly like doesn't age.
I know, it's really strange, right? Like I watch her play in the poker tournaments and stuff, and I'm like, Jesus, man, like she's like in her mid-60s and
she's
doesn't
actually
look
pretty good at poker, which is fun.
No, she's like, well, she's a professional. Yeah. She's actually a professional player. But yeah, so like Meg Tilly's character in the movie is kind of interesting because like even right off the hop, like you don't really think that she's even involved, and then when the reveal happens that she is the daughter and that they've been kind of working together, but she's like, she almost seems like she's on Norman's side right from the start. It doesn't really seem too much, except for the fact that she came into his life, right? But it always seems like she was kind of like on his side, like, you know, he's kind of, you know, rehabilitated. Yeah, it's kind of a strange setup.
Is she playing it? Is she just that good at acting to where she's like, you know, just trying to be like that, or does she develop like a sadness for him right away? Based on their conversations, which I could see because she really doesn't know him. And, you know, if as an audience, we can see that like, okay, he's trying to be a changed man, then as a character, she would be able to see that too.
I think it's because like, you know, what he did for her at the restaurant, and he like went out of his way to help her. You know, he's the one that brought her into the hotel, or basically into his house. And I think right away she was kind of like, okay, I'm working with my mom. We're gonna do this to him. But it seems like right away, like she's on Norman's side. Like she believes that he is totally rehabilitated, right? Yeah. And you just kind of get that because when you get the reveal, like you can tell that she's not really happy with her mom. Like, you know, he's fine. He's not fucking talking to his mom. He's not going crazy and shit. Like leave him alone, kind of thing, right? I kind of like.
I think another thing that's really cool about this film that is when you've seen it a handful of times, this is easy to like forget. But the very first time I watched this, I remember that they still managed to capture the suspense and the mystery, and you wonder, well, who is Norman snapped? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And that's pretty incredible to do, and to not make it feel cheap all these years later. There's a genuine mystery what's going on,
right?
And it's very, you know, Hitchcock, right, which is incredible that they were able to do.
It's a great thriller, man. They pull it off. You know what's interesting? This movie runs almost 2 hours long, and
it fucking flies by. I'll tell you that.
It's not like a body. It has these kind of slasher appeals to it. It's not a body count film, but the narrative just clips along. There's always something happening. Like it's such a beautiful film. Like the transitions with the cinematography and stuff just keep you so engaged in this film, and it's like it's just such an honest film because you really do feel bad for Norman in this situation, right? You're like, okay, like he, you know, you just, I don't know, there's something about the way he plays this character that's so good. The
reason that Norman is an interesting character in general is he's never really been the villain. Like, as the police say, it wasn't Norman committing the crime, it was his mother, at least in his head. So it's a genuine
his alternate personality, essentially.
Yeah, it's a genuine case of a mental illness.
Right.
Like, it's him due to abuse from his mother and, you know, trauma. Taking on this mother personality and doing the murders, and so it's easy to feel sympathy for him because it's not really his fault. You know what I mean?
No, it's
just
not.
the way that it happened.
No, you can't blame somebody that has mental issues, right? I mean, if you're literally going to switch to a different personality, that's not you, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like having two people. So like. He's very sympathetic in that aspect, and honestly, dude, they're doing him so wrong,
like, dude. So bad.
They're just fucking with him so bad, and it's just like it's nasty, dude. It's so brutal, man.
But I mean, they're literally making it sit like they're. Well, it's interesting too because there's multiple things happening because on one hand they're calling and pretending to be his mother,
Right.
and then on the other hand, Mrs. Spool is calling and talking as if she's his mother. So it's like he's just getting fucked from all ways.
The only issues I've ever had really with this movie is basically the bookends, man. We're talking the opening scene in the movie, I feel, is a little cheap. I don't understand. Okay, so my theory is on the opening scene, they show the famous shower scene as the opening scene in this movie, and I think it's a little bit cheap because, like, instead of, I get it, it's not like I don't really know how to say it. Like, I mean, they're not recapping the first film, but they're showing you a famous scene. They're almost like recapping the first film without recapping the first film. Is that kind of what they're doing by showing that scene? Because I don't think it's even, there's a point to it. I don't think there's a point of showing that scene in the beginning of the movie. It doesn't play into anything, really.
It's probably just to sort of remind the audience who, because you got to remember too, you know, it wasn't easy to just see movies in the early 80s. So it's probably like a reminder, like, hey, this happened.
I know, but like, it would kind of make more sense after 22 years to do a minor recap of what happened in the first film instead of just showing one famous scene that doesn't. But because out of context, like, so if you've never even seen the movie, you just saw the famous shower scene at the beginning of part 2. Because theoretically, you don't need to see the original film to watch Psycho 2. Even without that shower, you don't really. It's nice for context of where Norman came from and all that type of stuff. But you could watch this movie as a film. It wouldn't work as well. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's kind of like they show this scene. It feels a little bit cheap to me because they just show the shower scene and then it gets into the narrative right away. And then the end of the movie with the reveal of, what's her name?
Mrs. Spool.
Mrs. Spool, yeah. Who basically tells Norman that she's his real mom. And that she had him when, she was young. And she, just couldn't have a child. So she gave Norman to her sister, which he always thought that, was his mom. And then, and then he does what he does at the end with the famous fucking shovel scene where he poisons her and then he fucking cranks her in the head with the shovel and kills her. What are your thoughts?
Which is brutal as shit.
I absolutely love that, but I get it from his standpoint though, because you were fucking lied to your entire life, dude. I actually can relate to this. Big time.
Well,
I 100% can relate to this. And I understand what he does at the end. I'm just wondering, like, what your actual thoughts are on that reveal of, do you think it kind of cheapens the whole aspect of the original narrative from the first film? His mother relationship and stuff, and what it does to the end of this movie? Because it's the last thing that you're left with in this movie. Like, okay, it kind of throws you a curveball. You're like, really? Like, this is his real mom and he just fucking took her out? Like, bring on part 3.
I actually kind of love it, if I'm being honest. And here's why. I think that Norman, by this point in the film, is completely reverted to his old self.
Oh, they fucked his head up so bad that they brought out the demons in him. Right.
And Mrs. and like because in Psycho 3 we do find out more about that,
right.
But just in the context of this film, it does make sense because typically, like, you figure if the first Psycho took place in 1960, Norman would have been raised in like the 40s or 50s, you know what I mean? The 30s or 40s, I don't even know. And typically at that time, if you had a child young, like, it was like super sketch, like, especially out of wedlock.
They allude to the wedlock thing, right? And that was a big thing. Like, if you weren't married and you were having kids, generally they ended up somewhere else.
Yeah. So if you had an older sibling, it would make sense for them to take the child. And then we get the idea that this disease, this is almost like it could be hereditary because she's a psycho too. She spent all her time in a mental hospital or whatever.
Right.
It's an interesting idea, but my favorite part of it is just the reveal, like, holy shit, somebody was actually talking to him on the phone.
Right.
That was it, because he seems so crazy about it. Like, everybody's like, your mother is not talking to you, Norman. And he's like, no, the other woman or whatever, like, my real mother. And you're just like, this guy's lost it. But it turns out, like, it really was. And then one of my favorite scenes in the entire film is the very, very, very end where he's carrying her up the stairs and she starts talking in her voice.
Right.
You know what I mean? put me near the window, Norman. You know what I mean? And like, it's
it's
creepy
him.
and scary, bro.
Yeah, it's him talking in his mother. It is totally creepy.
Because it just like boom, it's instantly, it kind of like ends where the first one began in a way. And that's kind of it. I've always found it really interesting, and it actually sets up a sequel perfectly, which we did get. But I don't know if they thought that they would get a sequel, or they were just setting it up. Or if they were just doing it artistically, like, and didn't even,
Well, that was going to be my next question. I'm like, I guess they probably had in mind if Psycho 2 is going to do well, we might as well go ahead and make a sequel, because we're running into that era of films where, if these sequels are doing well, just keep it going kind of thing. So I'm wondering if they wrote that in there to kind of set it up to expand the narrative into part 3, having to do with his mom, his real mom. And but who knows? But who really knows?
We didn't get a sequel to it. What, 86?
Yeah, it was
when Psycho 3 came out.
Yeah, it
was like 3 years later. That's actually a lot longer than you would expect. Psycho 2 did well at the box office. It made like $30 million, which for that time as well,
And I would like, Psycho 3 was an interesting film too, because Anthony Perkins decided to direct it himself, and I love Psycho 3 for that fact, because like, he directs the film because he knows the character so well. Like it's got great transitions, it's got really in-depth like characterization. Like it's a really well done film that people kind of overlook.
Honestly,
it's kind of a shame.
Whenever you're talking about this list, you would actually think that they would have put Psycho 3 on the list over 2.
Right.
Because Psycho 3 is just as good, but sort of more of a black sheep of the films. Like, I feel like Psycho 3 doesn't get the respect that Psycho 2 does.
It absolutely doesn't.
So you would think that they might have chose Psycho 3 for the list.
Right.
But I love Psycho 3 as well, and I agree with you. The direction in that film is fantastic. And it was so cool to see somebody who completely got the character take the reins, because Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins, I mean, even in this film, you get so much Anthony Perkins in this film, so much Norman Bates, you get so much time, and just the levels of acting, the complexities of the onion of acting that's involved in this film from the beginning. Like, he's completely different from the beginning to the middle to the end. He has so many different beats and levels to that performance as he gets crazier and crazier.
He's so unsure, because he's like a little boy thrown to the wolves, right? Which is reality, right? He hasn't been around. He's missed 22 years, and like, you can hear it in his voice. He trembles when he talks. He's like a little boy. He's got his shoulders inverted, right? And he's just like, he's unsure about everything. And as the film progresses, like as his mentality starts to go south, you see that demeanor change, and even in his eyes and the way he presents, like his acting is amazing in this movie. It really is an outstanding performance.
It really is. And dude, just in general, the Psycho house is one of the most like iconic fucking buildings ever. Like, just the layout of it, how it overlooks
it's never looked better.
It's so cool, dude. I just love it.
I know that they had to like kind of build the set for Psycho 2, because I don't think it was fully there anymore, like, 22 years later kind of thing. But the way they built it, like, it looks so good. And the way Dean Cundey shoots, like, there's this amazing fucking scene, the first scene where Anthony Perkins kind of sees his mother up in the window. It's kind of like this angled shot that Dean Cundey uses, and Norman Bates, he's standing on top of the stairs and he's getting ready to run up there. And the angle that he shoots it at, it's kind of upwards off on like a 45-degree angle. It's off kilter. It is one of the best shots in cinema, man. It's so cool because it captures Norman over here, the house, and the shot is angled. It's beautiful. It's lit well. The background, like, oh man, like Cundey's, it's just fantastic. Like,
well, even at the end too. The behind you on the poster there, that shot, amazing. There's a shot where the kids are breaking into the house and the girl takes off running, and the transition top-down shot,
the top down, it literally pans down, and the way he pans it down, and it's an aerial shot into these kids breaking into the place, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, it's like such a fucking kid thing to do. You're just gonna go break into the Bates house to go and smoke weed and fucking rubber titties and shit. I'm like, dude, like, what do you? It's such a child thing to do, but yeah, like that, the angle that he shot that at and the transition is just a magnificent shot.
There's a great top down shot at the top of the steps too, which I think might have been in the original Psycho, similar shot. But I love that. shot as well. Like the movie's shot so well. It really is crafted brilliantly, and that's what's so cool about the film in general. Is like there's all these complexities to the acting and the shots and the music and the the characters. Like the guy that you mentioned at the hotel. Like, dude, I mean that guy
Dennis
comes off like such a dickhead, especially when he comes into the diner. Oh my god, you know what I mean? Like, how obnoxious.
You know, this whole movie is really casted well. Like, I mean, Dennis Franz, he's probably most famous for being, what was his name? He was on NYPD Blue back in the 90s. He was like the head cop on there. But you got Robert Loggia, who plays the doctor in the film. He's like in everything, man.
I've seen him a bunch of times.
Right. Like, there's just so many great actors and stuff, but everyone does such a good job. But knowing the relationship between Meg Tilly and Anthony Perkins, apparently they didn't talk at all after she had her little thing about, because he got pissed off and he's like, "What, you don't know who the fuck I am?" kind of thing, right? So anyways, I guess Richard Franklin actually didn't get along with Meg Tilly either. And actually at one point, Anthony Perkins actually tried to get her fired, but they'd already shot like more than half of her scenes and it just wouldn't have been financially stable. Yeah, it wouldn't have been financially stable to fucking, just recast and reshoot and stuff, right? So, but I guess like the relationship was so tainted between, this kind of trifecta of like Richard Franklin and Meg Tilly and Anthony Perkins that it's amazing how well the chemistry is on screen, because it kind of puts in perspective how great their performances are, because if in real life that they're not getting along and they just put that shit aside and play their characters the way they are, and the performances are outstanding. Right? Like, I mean, the movie turned out fantastic on all levels. Like, it's directed fine. You can tell that there wasn't, like, production issues. But, I mean, a lot of movies have personnel issues, but it's incredible to be so noted that they really did not like each other. And, to the point where she never even showed up at the premiere kind of thing. But puts into perspective how well their performances are. Like, Meg Tilly's performance is kind of underrated. And it's kind of a shame that she never, like, really kind of, did bigger things and stuff like her sister. But yeah, I think she was actually a pretty good actress, but
yeah, it's kind of like Jamie Lee's sister, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because she did the what's that movie called with the
I just watched
the Italian film.
I just watched her in the she was in The Sec.
The Sect, yeah. She did good in there, and you just don't see her anywhere else.
Right.
So Norman Bates, played by the wonderful Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins, dude, I mean, when you look at any of the horror stuff that he's done, whether it's like Edge of Sanity, the Psycho films, Crimes of Passion is a cool one. He's just always amazing. Like, he was such a fantastic actor. Of course, he did pass away from, I believe, HIV.
He did, yeah. That's
in the mid 2000s, or 90s, I believe. What was it? 98? I can't remember.
I think it was like just after he died in 1992, so that was shortly after Psycho 4.
Okay. Did you know his wife died
in the Twin Towers? Or she was in a plane. She was
actually on a plane.
Yeah, she's on a plane.
Carly told me that today, and I think I had known that, but I think I forgot. But that's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah, actually, I remember that coming out like after the Twin Towers and shit, and I was like, holy fuck, that's really crazy, man. Yeah, there's actually a scene in this film where Anthony Perkins looks in, I think it's the mirror shot, and the little boy that's in the mirror is actually his real son. That's Oz Perkins.
Yep, Osgood Perkins, who was actually named after his grandfather, so Anthony Perkins' dad, and of course the director of The Black Coat's Daughter, as well as I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, and Gretel and Hansel.
Right, so he became a very good director.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, I've always said that like Anthony Perkins is a majorly underrated actor, because people kind of like almost kind of pigeonholed him a little bit or typecast him as Norman Bates, but like he really is good in a lot of fucking movies, man. Have you ever seen the movie? You probably haven't, but it's called Someone Behind the Door.
No, I don't think I have.
It's a film from 1971. It's Anthony Perkins and Charles Bronson in a really
that's
good.
A cool
pairing. Dude, it's a really cool movie, man. Kino put out the Blu-ray. I just watched it, I think last year or whatever for the first time, and I was so curious on it because I'm a huge everybody. I love Charles Bronson. He's like one of my favorites ever.
Yeah, Bronson's kicks ass.
I just love him in everything. And then Anthony Perkins is one of my all-time favorite actors too. And I was like, this is the greatest combination ever. I'm like, how have I never seen this film? But they're so good together. Like like it's a brilliant movie. But anyways, just talking about other performances by Anthony Perkins that really do stick out. Like, you know, he's got his stuff like Edge of Sanity where he plays Jekyll and Hyde, right? Mm-hmm. And I think his performance in that movie is so damn underrated, man. It's really fucking good. And it's kind of like, I mean, I once said to myself, I'm like, you know, he had a lot of practice with this Jekyll and Hyde type shit from playing Norman Bates for so long, right? You know, doing multiple personalities and shit. So like when he did that film, I was like, fuck, man, that's a really damn good performance. So
absolutely, yeah, I agree 100% on that.
Okay. So this is really strange. This is fucking beyond strange. So yesterday I was sitting at the house. I was like, I'm fucking bored, man. I'm like, I need to go digging for music and movies, and I'm gonna go to my local fucking Value Village. I go in there maybe once, maybe twice a year. I usually try to go around this time because people like spring cleaning and get rid of shit and stuff. Sometimes you can find some things. And I always, you know, I go check out the CDs and the movies, and there's usually like, fuck all. I actually did find a couple things. But I always go check the books because I always find like novelizations in there and stuff. Like that's where I've gotten most of my horror novelizations, right? So I'm kind of looking, I'm like, fuck, there's nothing in here. There's like not even Stephen King. There was a couple Dean Koontz books and, you know, fucking whatever. Anyways, this is sitting on the shelf. I shit you not. Psycho 2. Okay, but what's interesting about the novelization, Robert Bloch's novelization, the movie is not based on this book. This is a completely different narrative. They wrote a unique story for the movie. But I thought it was just very odd that I found Psycho 2, out of all things to find, the day before we're going to record this review. I know, so weird. Dude, like, it's just... now I want to read it because I'm like...
Yeah, I've actually not read this yet either. This is funny, though. I found this at a Goodwill...
Right.
A couple years ago when I was with Carly, and she was all, like, bummed, like, that I found it, and she didn't. And then, like, a couple days later, she found a copy at a Goodwill. So I guess Psycho 2 just pops up at random weird times, you know.
Did you see? So you said you haven't seen this, or you haven't read this before?
I have not read this before.
So the storyline that this is like, now years after his bout of butchery that horrified the world, Norman Bates is at large again, breaking free from the psycho ward, cutting and shocking swath of blood all the way to Hollywood, where so it happens they are making a movie about Norman's life and crimes.
That sounds fucking ridiculous, but I'm curious to see how it reads.
But I like it. I like the fact that in the book he breaks out, man. He breaks out of the psych ward. I'm like, that's awesome.
The thing I was wondering about Psycho 2, the book here, is if you look at like the cover there, like after that cover,
right,
it has a nun there, and as we know, there's a runaway nun in Psycho 3. I wonder if that was inspired by this.
Oh, right, good point. Yeah, that's interesting, man. Okay, so I wanted to bring up one other thing. What are your thoughts on the effects in this movie? I looked into it because I wanted to see who did the effects, if I recognize the name or whatever. And it's, who is it? Makeup department, arts. So Greg C. Jensen, I think was like the lead special effects artist on the film, and I was kind of looking him up, and I'm like, yeah, he worked on a lot of movies. He actually did the effects for Goonies. He worked on Goonies. I was like, oh, that's crazy, because we just have a very common bond with that being our favorite like non-horror film. Thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what effects are in the movie. I'm really bad with that.
Okay, so there's the Dennis Franz kill, the dickhead who gets the knife across the face.
Yeah,
it kind of slices up his fucking face, and then we get Mary's mother, which I guess Marion's sister. She gets the fucking knife through the throat.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't get to see the boy's death. We just get the and then obviously there's not really much of an effect with the shovel kill because there's no blood on it. He just like
dude, that shovel kill is the best though. It's so violent. It is like, holy shit.
I said this once. I reviewed and I think I said it in my review too, and I was like, I think the most violent kill in the film isn't the slashing of the face or the fucking knife down the throat. It's the shovel that doesn't even cause any blood.
Yeah, it's just so brutal. Like the sound, and it just like I'm convinced that he hit her in the head with the shovel because it looks so good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that was insane. And first he poisons her and then fucking cracks her with the shovel.
I know.
But
He double kills her, man. It's
yeah,
amazing.
I mean, it's not a huge effects movie. Psycho 3 definitely has a bit more effects. When he grabs the knife, I mean, he gets tore up a little bit too. He gets slashed up.
Yeah.
And when he grabs the knife and stuff, that always makes me cringe so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that, I mean, that whole end is interesting how it plays out too, because the police are just like have no clue that, you know, that the murders weren't done by they weren't done by Norman either, but they weren't done by the sister and the daughter, and they're just like, yep, it wraps up. And that kind of it's kind of interesting how the film plays out too with the police narrative aspect, because you know that there's a girl that says, go ahead.
I think that they set it up good, because by getting Mary into Mother's clothes was the greatest setup ever.
Oh,
because it sets it up for her getting shot by the cops.
She did a Jenny Friday 2 thing.
Yeah.
Right? Where she dressed up as Mrs. Voorhees. Or wait. Yeah, that's Friday 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the
Yeah. And it made sense, you know. But like the police aren't gonna ever put that together, right? They're just gonna be like,
it's just
look, she was.
It's so ironic though, right? Because she dresses up in Mummy's attire to help Norman get past this, and she ends up fucking getting dead.
Yeah.
From it. It's like, holy shit, dude. Like, it's kind of funny. You almost feel bad for her. You're like, oh damn, dude. Even though she was part of the setup, but I mean, you know.
Also, we do find out that Marion Crane's sister actually married her dude the Sam Loomis character.
Yeah, the Sam Loomis,
yeah. So that's it's kind of interesting. I mean, you kind of get that vibe that probably would have happened when you watch the original Psycho, because they are like getting close together, trying to find out this mystery.
It is interesting that they even brought him up in the film. Like, they didn't have his kid, because they do say that he was back home or something like that.
No, she said he passed away.
Oh, that's right, he passed away. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, kind of a cool to throw that in there. Good world building.
Yeah, they killed him off in this one because they didn't want to like bring his character back or something like that. So they just like, he died. Because I mean, it makes sense. It's like 22 years later. I mean, anything can happen, right? So kind of made sense. You don't need another character in there. Just he passed away.
Yeah, and it also sets up the fact that like, okay, Meg Tilly looks about 22 or whatever.
Right.
They probably had her like right after, you know, this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think that the script like is about as good as you could do for continuing this story, and the story feels lived in and real, and it feels like an extension. And also another thing that's interesting too is I wonder if there was ever consideration to shoot it in black and white. I don't think, probably because like the 80s, by the time the 80s, like nobody wanted to do black and white anymore. But it's interesting that it feels so the same, but it's in color. But it feels so cool how that works.
I honestly don't think it would have worked in black and white, because it being 22 years later, you have to modernize it. Because because
the
it's
story is modern.
It's a modernized story, and it's also, it's, you know, Norman Bates is old. You got to give it a fresh look. And
it actually unintentionally helps with the time frame, right? Because it makes it like because black and white feels old, color feels new.
It's the modernization of it.
When you take a story that was in black and white and then one that's color and it's 22 years later, it actually helps you.
It puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
It makes you really do feel like, holy shit, man, that's fucking 22 years, man. You know, it really does. But man, I tell you though, man, if this movie was shot in black and white by Dean Cundy, I don't think it would be as beautiful, because the lighting along with the cinematography is so amazing. Like, I don't really hear people talk about lighting as much as we bring it up a lot on the podcast, because I'm a big visual person. Like, I love cinematography and I love lighting, and that's why I'm a huge Argento fan and Mario Bava fan, because I love lighting and color palettes and really unique sets and stuff. And when you throw in a great cinematographer, and have you ever seen movies that are like lit really well, but you're like, man, these angles that are they're just not working properly? Well, Dean Cundy, this is honestly one of the best movies he ever shot.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this movie is way more appealing than the original Psycho from a visual standpoint. And it's not because I don't like black and white movies. I love black and white movies.
Right.
But if you compare the two next to each other, this is a fantastically beautiful film. It's amazing. It really is. And the transfer is fantastic. There's actually one part in the film that it kind of dips in quality. Did you notice that? Like, you know when they're digging the car out of the pond and stuff, just before, like, it dips in quality, and then when there's a close-up of the cops and Mary talking, whatever, it goes right back into the good transfer. But, like, what's with that little dip in quality?
Yeah, I don't know. That was weird, huh?
It is weird. It's almost like they missed those scenes or something. It's very strange. But otherwise, the whole movie just is, like, phenomenal looking.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at his career, dude. The Fog, Escape from New York. I mean, all the Carpenter stuff.
Well, he shot all the Back to the Future movies too, didn't he?
Back to the Future, yep.
Right.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah.
Jurassic fucking Park.
Dude, it's like ridiculous what this guy has done. I mean, he made some of these movies what they are when you really put it in perspective. I mean, you can take these low budget movies and you put a shitty cinematographer out there and it's not as good. It's just not as good. I mean, look at the angles, dude. It's the angles. Oh man,
yeah, he's a fantastic cinematographer.
Fantastic. Yeah, music's great. I think the score works so well in this movie too, because it's like, it's not one of those overpowering scores. It works perfectly with the thriller, the psychological thrill angle of the film, of the narrative.
Yeah.
It's not overpowering. It's like not crazy strings, and you know, like sometimes when you hear a score and you're like, oh fuck, okay, I get it. It's dramatic. It's way dramatic. But this is kind of like a little lower key, but it works so damn well. It's a really good score. Very underrated score.
It would have been so easy to just make this a cheap slasher film, and they didn't.
Okay, put it this way. If this movie was directed by De Palma for TV, starring Christopher Walken as Norman Bates and Jamie Lee Curtis, just say that's the cast for the TV film, hypothetically speaking, how do you think this turns out? And not shot by Dean Cundy, because there's no way Dean Cundy was signed on for a TV film at this time. Like, he was already sought out. Like, he was majorly sought out.
I don't think that there would be a way for the fucking Christopher Walken to capture. Like, I love Walken, and he's great in a lot of stuff, but I just can't picture him as Norman Bates, bro. Like,
you know what? Christopher Walken is a great actor. But it would have been an interesting transition to see, like, Anthony Perkins and then Walken's doing Norman Bates.
Walken thing, yeah.
Like, it's just like, but the casting makes sense because Christopher Walken is tall and lanky, just like Anthony Perkins, right? So it kind of made sense from a visual standpoint of that character. Yeah. You can buy it. You know, you can totally buy into the character, but I would have
probably better than Vince Vaughn.
Now I want to see this movie. I want to see De Palma do a Psycho movie, considering he is very Hitchcockian,
right?
And like have that connection with Jamie Lee Curtis, Christopher Walken. But I don't know. It's just it's curious. It's curious. You know?
It is. That's a weird thought. It's like alternate reality stuff,
right?
What could have been? You know, it's like what would have Peter Jackson's Elm Street 6 looked like? You know.
You know, and it's funny too, because when you look at Psycho 2, it's like, you know, it does have some pretty decent kill. Like, I mean, I like the slashing scene on the face and the, you know, the knife through the throat. You probably wouldn't get those in the TV version, right? But it wouldn't even really change much, because those aren't the big standout points of the film. It's the psychological thriller angle of the movie that keeps you interested the whole time, and the performances. The kills are just they're like a secondary joy to the film to see those type of things, and it's like. Right. For me, when I watch anything with Anthony Perkins, I'm watching him, because I love that dude, man. Like, he died way too young, man. Way too. I would have loved to have seen what he would have done like throughout the 90s and like later in his career and shit. But his health just took a major shit on him, man. Because, you know, I think he had HIV for like a long time.
It was way harder to deal with back then, right? Like, now you have a lot of more effective treatment methods, but you're talking late 80s, early 90s.
Well, people are living long and healthy lives that are infected right now. It's not like it was, right? So it's kind of a shame, but yeah, Psycho 2. I gotta say, man, I'm a big fan. I love the artwork on Psycho 2.
Oh yeah,
it's such a great cover, man.
They didn't. This is one of the only Scream Factory
didn't have a
collector's
commission
editions that they kept the original artwork.
Yeah, it's very. Remember we talked about this when it came out. We're like, why didn't they commission new artwork? And at the same time, I was like, it would have been cool to see new commission, because actually some of the releases from this era of Scream Factory had some pretty good commission stuff. Like Day of the Dead was a good one.
Oh yeah, there's actually most of them. I think at this point they were all good. Until you know,
and because that was, what was the artist's name that was doing all those ones? He was really good, and then he left.
I forget his name.
Yeah, and then they got a couple other artists in there, and then they just kind of like started taking shits on him. They just got really kind of goofy and ugly.
Yeah, some of them are like, I was watching your Scream Factory shelf video, and when you get to Carrie, I'm like, ugh.
I know, it's nasty, right?
I was like, ugh, what is that?
You know, I got to the point where I was like so anal about those collector's editions, and I was like, man, I gotta get them with the slip covers, even though I'm like, why?
Oh, so was I.
And then all of a sudden you don't get one with it, and I'm like, I'm totally over it. But then I realized,
that's what happens. You don't get one, and then you're like, well, fuck this, you know? Like, I didn't get Poltergeist 2 or something, and I was pissed.
Yeah, I never even picked up. I don't really like Poltergeist 2 that much, so I never even picked it up. But like part 3, I was kind of wishing that it didn't come with the slipcover, because you know the artwork for part 3 is one of my favorite poster arts of all time, right? The High Riser. And I'm like, why would I want to look at this cartoony slipcover when I can look at the original artwork, man? It's awesome. But that's like a lot of the movies, though, man. I'm just like, these slipcovers are good. Gross stuff. There's
some weird ones, like they like that Carrie one always bugged me.
Yeah,
I mean, there is some phenomenal ones too, like Day of the Dead, and hell, I even like this Phantasm one behind me and the Halloween 3 one over there.
Yeah, you know what the goofiest ones are ever? Are Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3.
I have those too.
I
have the posters.
The heads on Bruce Springsteen's sister are hilarious
Pamela.
looking. Pamela
really,
Springsteen.
The second one is where it looks real weird.
Yeah, it's like all misshaped, and it's like, it's so damn goofy.
But man, like the People Under the Stairs one is amazing.
Yeah,
Serpent in the Rainbow is really good.
Yeah,
there's some good ones. There's some bad ones too.
It's more the newer ones. Yeah, I'm just like whatever. But
yeah, but yeah, that's Psycho 2. We got anything else on it?
Rating?
Yeah, rating.
Never did rate it.
Am I just going first every time?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Psycho 2, absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite sequels, like you mentioned, and I don't think I could say it's better than the original Psycho just because of like what that film did. But watching Psycho 2, well, I watched Psycho 1 and then I watched Psycho 2 because I wanted to check out, it gave me a good excuse to check out the Psycho 4K transfer.
Right.
And then I was like, it made me instantly want to watch Psycho 3 and 4 because it's such a good 4 films there. Mm-hmm. Psycho 4 is a step down, but still, I love the 4. Yeah. It's just one of the best sequels ever, man. I love it. I give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't really care about the movie is just the opening sequence, just rehashing the famous shower scene. I just don't see a point of doing it. I really don't. It adds nothing to the movie. Like, you could have started the film right after that thing ended and it would have been just perfect, you know? And I don't know if people kind of where I was going before, like about the bookends and stuff with the real mother reveal and stuff. I think it's actually really cool too. I think it's just an interesting kind of like antidote to the film. You're like, holy shit, like we just got that. Like it just comes out of nowhere, but then
it comes out of nowhere. Like it's so shocking.
But it makes a lot of sense, like what was happening to him throughout the film too. Like they were fucking with him, but then she was really calling. But okay, that is actually
so weird because you see her walk, like at the end of the film, you know, everything's wrapped up, and then he's in his kitchen, and it cuts outside of to her walking up the steps, and you're like, what the hell? You know, is this him like delusions again?
Right.
And then she shows up at the door, and you're like,
right,
what?
Yeah, and he's not surprised when she shows up claiming to be the mom and stuff because she's been telling him that on the phone.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about the whole phone call thing is why, like, if you were someone's father, would you not just want to save that conversation for face to face? Maybe, like, why would you start calling? Like, it's an odd thing to do. It's an odd thing to do. Obviously, she wouldn't know that, you know, other people are fucking with him on the phone and stuff. So, but the point is, like, if you wanted to let somebody know that you were the real guardian or the real parent, you might want to do that face to face. It is a little bit odd, but it plays into the narrative perfectly for this.
Yeah.
For this,
and it gets him another mother corpse.
It does. It does get him another mother corpse. Yes. Yes, it does. I'm coming in at 9.5 out of 10.
Ooh,
I think this one
nice.
all around is it's just, there's really nothing wrong with it. There's great everything about this movie, which we all mentioned and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I would probably, it's funny because when it comes to Psycho films, I've done this many times actually, where I've watched Psycho 2, 3, and 4, and I just kind of skip by the first one. I prefer to watch Psycho 2. I'm not going to say Psycho 2 is a better film than the first one, but I think I would rather watch Psycho 2 than the original film.
I was actually going to mention that when I said that Psycho is a better movie, but I actually prefer to watch Psycho 2, 3, and 4 more than the original Psycho. That's not saying that I don't have a mood for Psycho, because
I love it.
Is fucking awesome too.
I love it.
But yeah, if I had to choose, I would rather watch Psycho 2.
Because I think that, like, if you watch Psycho 2 and 3 back to back, they're just such great companion pieces, man. And it's like, it's just so damn cool, man. The only thing about part 4 that bugs me is it's more of like it's Perkins telling the story, right? So you don't get a lot of Perkins. You get the other guy that's playing the young Anthony Perkins, or the young Norman Bates, I mean. But, but that was also actually made for TV. Right, so we're talking budget here. I mean, you could probably shoot Anthony Perkins scenes all in probably a couple days. Really?
Right.
It was one shot. Like, it was him in the radio station. I think that's what it is, and that's it. So
yeah.
But Psycho 2, man, fantastic film. So everybody out there that watches review, let us know your thoughts on the movie. If you agree.
A few people said they were going to follow along with this, so that's awesome. Definitely drop a comment letting us know what you thought of this one. I'm sure it'll get more interesting when we get films that everybody hasn't seen, but Psycho 2 definitely more seen now than it used to be. Right.
And there is a few films on this list I actually haven't seen before, so that's always exciting. But speaking of that, we actually have to do the randomizer now. So I have
let's see what we're gonna get.
I have the other 198 movies ready to go here, and all we got to do is hit this randomize button, which I'll do right now. And we have Vampires. So that is the movie.
The old Vampires?
Yeah, that'll be from 1974, I believe.
Oh wait, so it's not the one from the 20s then?
No, it's the other one. Not Vampire. Vampires.
Okay. Vampire is on that list, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is a fantastic movie in itself.
Oh yeah, I have the criterion of that.
Yep, 1974. I actually reviewed this on the 31 Days of Horror a few years back, and I did the remake the next day. I did them back to back.
Okay.
If you're not familiar with Vampires, it's a Jose Ramon Lawrence film, and it's a good one. It's definitely a decent. It's actually probably one of the best films that he ever made. And he's done some pretty interesting films. His career was kind of like different in the 80s, lower budget kind of like slasher type films and shit that he was doing. Pretty funny, but
who put that out? Did Blue Underground put that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Vampires.
I gotta see if I have that.
So Blue Underground put it out, and then they who put out the Blu-ray? I can't. Oh, Arrow. I think it's actually in that box set too. It is.
Really?
Yeah. Arrow put out the Blu-ray too, so yeah. And then they also put out like Edge of the Axe and Rest in Peace, or not Rest in Pieces, that was Vinegar Syndrome, but they put out Edge of the Axe and Deadly Manor, I think they put out also, and yeah. But yeah, this is the movie that he did after Symptoms. Symptoms was released by Mondo Macabro. That's a fantastic movie. It's a really, really good movie. Like the early part of his career is like a totally different director than his later part, because he kind of like conformed to like making shitty slasher movies and very 80s kind of garbage films, but are fun. But so Vampires from 1974, directed by Jose Lawrence, Ramon Lawrence, however you say his name. Probably just butchering the shit out of that. So for the people that want to watch and play along with us, yes, that's the next one. So
okay, interesting. I have not. That's one that I haven't seen.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely in that box set that Arrow put out. So I'm not sure if you have that, but it's definitely widely and readily available.
I have that. It's on Tubi, so I'll be fine watching it. But
right.
Probably still try to pick it up.
Yeah, Tubi, the 720 maximum picks.
Right.
So, All right, so yeah, let's get out of here. That was Psycho 2, and we'll catch you guys next time. Like we said, we don't really have a time frame. We'll try to get these out a little bit quicker. We just kind of had some like scheduling conflicts.
Yeah.
Kind of like with the podcast, we haven't done one in like a month because like JP guest has to work every Monday now.
So. Right. Yeah.
but
yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're out of here, guys. Check you on the next one in episode 3.
Peace.
No